if you work in product and one day you would like to be a products leader, or even if you're a products leader currently, this is the conversation for you. Today we hear from Ritu Soni, who has a career that spans kind of bootstrapping her own startup in India to leading product for some of the most recognized global brands in fintech. And now, over the next months and years, she's going to be starting her own fintech as a single founder, doing something really, really cool and exciting, which she explains a little bit about in this conversation. So, Ritu, welcome to the pod. What would be great to start with is if you could just tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, thanks for having me here. I'm Ritu Soni, and I'm a product person through and through. I love building products. I've been building products since the dot-com bubble burst. Perfectly timed. In early 2000s, been working in financial services for over 10 years now. Love being in fintech almost all days. Built some products that failed magnificently, some that have succeeded, but all of them extremely rewarding. And I live in London. I'm a single mother to two fiercely independent young women. And yeah.
Very good.
Be here.
Very good. Well, look, it sounds like you've obviously got a lot on your plate, and coupled with that, developed some amazing skills through the course of your career. So jumping straight into it then, so from your perspective, how would you describe an effective product leader, or what makes an effective product leader?
Look, from my perspective, as a product person, if I'm not delivering business value every day, then honestly, they're wasting their money and I'm wasting my time. Product is not a theoretical function or a theoretical concept. Product is there to efficiently, effectively deliver business value while being absolutely customer-driven, data-backed, and commercially focused. These are my three basic tenets of good product leadership. Right? You have to focus on customers. You have to deliver on business KPIs because, come on, unless you're working in non-profit organizations, there are KPIs that the business needs to deliver to thrive. And all of these decisions cannot be made devoid of data. So you need to have enough data and make data-backed decisions as a product leader.
So the data acts as the kind of underlying tool to enable you to make the right decisions.
Absolutely. I think data is so critical. And just over here, a point that makes me think about data is painful. And I'll tell you why. You can be in very large organizations, and I've been there, where data becomes the stumbling block because either the company's grown up too quickly or the data systems are not as mature as the organization, and there's a gap. So a lot of product people have to kind of drive in the dark, and data should be your eyes and ears. So for that reason, I think product analysts in your team as a product person will help you become great product leaders as well, because they will be your eyes and ears.
Right.
And if they don't have the right data set to talk of, then you're in trouble, as you can imagine.
Of course, yeah, I can see that, and it resonates even in terms of our own business, right? But so going back to the point around customer versus business KPIs, I guess occasionally those two things can be at odds too. If you're thinking long-term customer benefits versus short-term business KPIs, how do you manage that situation?
I'm going to be a little bit of a rebel here. I think it is one. If you're not serving your customers well in the short term, in the long run, then you are not serving your business well. It's all interlocked. This whole thing about going and working in a bubble devoid of this whole business KPI thing and being this very cool product person, to be honest, I don't buy that. We are all working for a business. The business will do well if they serve their customers well. It's really as simple as that. Now, your short-term priorities can vary. Your business can say, hey, the short term, this is what I want done. But as a product person, you're looking at the customer experience and saying, this is really shite. I really want the customer to have a better experience and I want to prioritize this. But that's what we are paid for. That's what product does. It sits in the middle, and it's not about what you want to do. You have to do what is right for the business, what's right for the customer, and balance the two. And there's another party, and that's your technology guys. And in fintech, it's all of your compliance, legal. You have to make sure that you're balancing all of this and building a roadmap that solves for all of them. But then, you know what? That's what our job is. That's what we're paid for.
It's difficult, I guess.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's fun. I love it.
Right. And have you ever been in a situation where the business KPIs don't necessarily align to the kind of the customer outcomes that you are trying to drive out as a product leader?
Yeah, a lot of times. There was this feature that in my last organization that we wanted to really try. It was called, and we wanted to experiment with that. I knew from my past experience and my gut that it would work and it would help us with retention. But because acquisition was such a big KPI for us at that point to effect, it kept getting pushed down. And I think it was like 3 quarters before the team actually took it up. So it really hurt me. Like I didn't wake up every morning and I'd be like at my team, like, guys, when are we building this feature? But so finally, when we had time in the roadmap to actually put it in, we had the capacity. The team, I remember they sent me a message, you will be happy today. I was like, yeah, sleep easy. But you know, you have to know that let's say, and this was not a vanity project, I knew this would work, but you have to be able to, differentiate between vanity projects that you believe will work or experiments versus the pain that you're seeing on the ground and you know will move the needle. So I think that comes with experience as a product person.
And then having the courage of your convictions as well, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yes, if you are a product person, you've got to be ready for it. And the more senior you get, it's not a very popular role. People may like you, but being a product person, if you're doing your job well, it's not a very popular role, because I think the most important thing is to know when to say no, right? To be able to say no pleasantly.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have to always take the team along, different functions along. You have to be a collaborative leader. But yes, the courage that you're talking about, having, the convictions of what will work and what will not work, that will build over experience, over a number of failures.
Yes. Yeah. Building those scars and experience.
And I have so many. Personal and professional.
Very good. Yeah, no, of course. And so when you talk about saying no, what type of things would you say no to in a kind of typical product leader role?
Fortunately, I've had great compliance partners and compliance leaders, right? Absolutely amazing people who make sure that we are not being a cowboy and we're keeping the regulators happy, but at the same time, they have one eye on the business KPIs, right? Those are great compliance leaders. But oftentimes in a regulated industry like mine, those are the people you have to sit across the table and say no to, because they would, especially if they're not very senior, they've had a conversation with the regulator, they get really like rattled.
Right.
They sit across the table and they'll be like, we need this. And then they want the full Ferrari. But you got to say, hey, but, that's going to really hit our customer conversion numbers. So can we go to something like this? Can we solve it like this? Can we get a little bit hacky, a little innovative? And then they have to go back to the regulators and convince them. So that, I think, is a difficult conversation in a regulated space, is your compliance partners and your legal partners oftentimes.
Of course. So you spend a lot of your time negotiating and influencing and bringing people on that journey, like you said.
Partnering, yes.
Right.
Yes, partnering. Because, look, and I know as then I was much like newer in the regulated space about 10 years ago, a little over that. It's easy to say, hey, this is absolute rubbish and this is what we're going to do. We have to understand, as the regulators asking you to do certain things, because it's treating your customers fairly.
Of course.
Yeah. And it's to make sure we don't cause any customer detriment. I think with experience, you realize that they're not coming from a place of wanting to squash your ambitions and treat your customers poorly. It's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
So as long as you partner with them, saying no becomes easier, because they also understand that, you're sitting across the table and actually you also got that collaborative hat on. You empathize, you understand where they're coming from, they understand where you're coming from.
Of course. Yeah, it's interesting, actually. I recently read the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, and he talks about the concept of start with no.
Yeah.
And actually, by starting with no, you make a conversation so much more open. Because if you start with a yes, then everyone's kind of really kind of their excitement and optimism is up a level, and then you really don't get to the guts of what you're actually trying to figure out, right? But you start with no, and then you're starting from a blank piece of paper, basically.
Exactly.
From there, which is...
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's quite cool, right? But okay, cool. And so in terms of your approach to product leadership, do you have a set of tools or like a framework that you generally follow?
So not about product leadership, but if you talk about products themselves, right? How do you go, let's say, when you're looking from a good to a great product, how do you really take it there? I think one of the key criteria is product differentiation, and it's quite elusive. It's easier said than done. We learn about it in business schools, right? We all talk about product differentiation, got so many different models that you can follow. But it's elusive, especially in the super commoditized, crowded fintech space. I've seen that it's more difficult to come up with a differentiator. But one thing I would recommend to all product people, follow whatever model you may follow, but follow a model to come to your USP, to form a differentiation, and share that across the organization, not only in your product team. So if you pick up a developer, tap them on the shoulder and 9 o'clock in the morning, they should be able to tell you what your product differentiator is, what your USP is, right? And if they don't, then there is a gap in your job and you need to kind of make that up. So one framework that I put together early on in my career, which my teams have found really useful across various organizations, is something I call the purple grid. Just because we didn't want to spend time figuring out a name, it's called the purple grid. It has 4 questions that you should have your whole team answer, especially people who come in new recruits as well. Get them to answer those 4 questions and make sure everyone's has the same answer across the organization.
Okay.
Number 1, who is your customer? What pain are you solving? Who else is solving that pain, and how are you solving differently or better?
Boom.
By the end of that 4th question, you will have your USP. And sometimes you are me too, and that's fine as well. But to have that knowledge, to have that agreement and understanding across the organization on all these 4 questions, I think is absolutely critical to building great products.
Yeah, it's a really fair point about it. Sometimes you are me too, right? Because I guess it's all in the execution.
It is in the execution, but look, it's a crowded market space, and there will be times when 2 people will have the same idea, a good idea, or the idea is so good that other people also want a piece of that pie.
Cool.
Right? So you will have me too's.
Yes.
And that's fine. But then that's where your, price wars come into play, or product differentiation in terms of UI comes into play. So there will be, even if you're a me too, there will be something you can differentiate on. You can talk about, sometimes it's just marketing.
Yeah.
Right? So, for example, my first cross-border money transfer product, I think it was in 2016, 2017, we were already too late to the party in terms of remittances. But most importantly, we didn't have a patented or a protected core capability that set us apart or gave us an automatic differentiator.
Really?
So at that time, we built a marketing differentiator. So we did a research with our customers, very important. We spoke to our customers and we found out that our target group, the one thing that really bothers them is not having control over the FX rate.
Right.
Right? So we said, all right, here, if you like the FX rate you see today, but you don't have the money right now, you can actually book it for up to 30 days.
Right.
Suddenly, that created this curiosity. And, people were coming, we were talking about it on the television. People, our affiliates were excited about this new concept. It was basically a more complex business user, like a forwards or a futures transaction. We kind of dummied it down and presented it.
Okay.
It was more expensive than the regular, send money now, because of the FX risk that we would have to take as an organization. But what that got us is that curiosity, the differentiation.
Yeah.
Right? And people would come to our app, to our website to learn more about this offer, but end up making a transfer right on the spot or come back next time when they had mind to make a transfer, because, we kind of created a little brand recognition recall later.
Yeah.
So there are various ways you can, as a Me Too, you can,
you're still solving a problem, but you're doing it in a way where, does it reflect the character of the product owner sometimes, do you think, as well?
Oh my God, yes.
Right.
So I think your personality, your product is an extension of your personality if you're a product leader.
Yes.
Right? Seriously, I unless it's a very large organization, where it's all set, it's like, I don't know, Series E, Series F, or IPO, huge organization. If you're a scale-up or a seed startup, of course, but even if you're a scale-up, as a product leader, your personality will reflect some way on the product.
Of course.
So you need to be, I think, even as a personality, you should look at having a growth mindset. So you need to be forgiving. You need to have a growth mindset. So always learning. You need to be happy and positive, right? Those are very, very important things as a product leader.
Of course.
But of course, have you seen corporates? So they can be mean, political, and noisy, right? So it's easier said than done. It's actually very difficult, challenging as a product person, and in that cantankerous role, really to have that positive mindset all the time.
So you've got the differentiated product offering, and then what comes next?
You have to be structured for success. You must have your teams, and not very bloated teams, by the way. I'm absolutely not a believer in large teams. I've gone from, I remember I inherited a 73 people team once recently and culled it down to 29, and that was the efficient number. So that's the kind of bloat companies kind of develop.
Right.
That's a good point. But more importantly, the structure of these teams. Now, we all know about the Spotify squads. I absolutely believe in those. They're really, really good. They should be KPI-led, so they be aligned to a KPI, right? And what is that KPI? That will vary from quarter to quarter because it depends on what are your top 3 business KPIs, and then you align it there. There are various methods of aligning it. To be honest, some people will say this squad only looks at acquisition, this squad only looks at retention, and that's all great. But sometimes you would, let's say the squad that's looking at acquisition is building feature 20 on acquisition, whereas the house is burning down on retention. So your teams or your even your developers, they need to be cross-trained to work across code bases. And your product manager should also be flexible enough to work on, let's say, to kind of throw all bodies at retention for the time being. So like I said, the cross-training is very important. We can't be siloing ourselves. And that's really, really critical. I think this was at PaySafe, amazing engineering team partners we worked with there. And what we did was we kind of moved every sprint, one developer from a certain team would move to another team and cross-train there for a sprint or 2 sprints. So at the end of the day, people were familiar across squads with the code base. Of course, you can't do this for very large organizations, but this really works. So cross-training is really key. The other thing I want to touch upon is the structure or the composition of the Spotify squad or the squads. Now, typically, you will have a product manager, an engineering manager, a product designer. Right, these 3 people you will definitely have. But what I feel also works is in there, you also add, so you have a product manager, you have an engineering manager, of course, the dev team. And then you have the product designer, but you also have a product analyst. Like I was saying earlier, data is key. So you need, and product analyst doesn't have to be dedicated. They can be shared across. Right. But you should have someone who's got eyes and ears on everything that's important to you in data. And the 5th person that we all kind of ignore in Prudence is the commercial lead.
Yeah.
There are a lot of organizations will have commercial leads and make sure that one of them is aligned with this with every squad. So it's just that collaboration is moving together. Otherwise, I've seen organizations as they grow in size, Prudence becomes with all of the squads and, it's really nice, really, really modern, but they're like working in a silo. And the rest of the organization, they're like, what the hell's going on there? Are they working on the right priorities? Blah, blah, blah. So always good to have a commercial person assigned to the squad. And again, it's light touch, right? Much lighter touch than what the PM or the EM are doing on an everyday basis. But their person is aligned. They know what they're doing. They know what they're planning for the sprint, for the quarter, and they're a team. So yeah, a squad of 5.
Must be quite difficult to bring that commercial person into a squad. I'm just thinking about it in terms of my experience of looking at businesses that we recruit for. Actually pulling people out of the business and bringing them into alignment with the Prudence teams is a constant challenge, right? Is there a way that you can incentivize them to be that much into detail, or do you hire separately to bring a commercial lens into the team?
No. So what I was really pleasantly surprised with over the last, I don't know how many years we've now been doing this. I think 6 years I've tried this model, and it's really, the commercial guys, they were parched for this. They were parched to have that inroad into Prudence and know what they were doing and kind of be part of the decisions of what is going to be built next right from scratch. So they are very excited. But I think the key is to agree the roles right at the start. At the end of the day, the product manager still has leadership on the roadmap. They decide the roadmap, but the commercial lead is there, and the product analyst is there to give their feedback. So they may not be accountable, but they're definitely responsible.
Cool.
And if you've divided those and agreed those roles right from get-go, then it'll be smooth sailing.
I can see how that would bring the friction type conversations into the Prudence team rather than having those externally once the product has been built or the thinking's been done at eye level.
Friction type, I love them. Like, you need friction conversations, right? If everyone's going to agree with whatever you say or whatever someone else says, then you're going to build a faulty product at the end of the day.
Got you. Yeah, no, amazing. Okay. I love the piece around cross-training teams as well. I think, from what I see, engineers would obviously love that opportunity, but probably don't get it all that often, right?
Yeah.
And then actually what you end up with is a bunch of really kind of siloed skills as people go through their career, only having worked in these types of organizations with this type of technology stack rather than having broad experience, which would be much more beneficial in the long run, I guess.
No, absolutely. Just one thing there with my learning, there's a lot of pride in squads, and that's amazing. Like, you got to be proud of what squad you belong to, what KPI you're affecting. Love that. But sometimes, because that pride is so strong, it becomes like, again, it creates a silo in a way, because you're like, oh, this is my squad. I don't want to go and work with them for two sprints or 3 sprints or whatever. So what you have to do is you have to also build pride right at the top, like unified product pride. And what I mean by that, so the numbers, the vision, that should be on the top level. It's not about what you're building in the acquisition part of the funnel, or it's not about what you're building for returning customers, right? But it's all about what the whole product is building for the end-to-end customer experience. And all the developers, your product people across the organization should feel pride. And that, I think, really falls on the shoulders of the product leader, because they have to pull everyone together, sell the same vision to everyone, and make sure that you're celebrating successes across the sexy part of the business and the unsexy part of the business. So, some platform thing that may go unseen while you're celebrating all customer-facing things, that shouldn't be the case, right? You have to celebrate both. So there's pride across. And so we used to do this thing called the report card session again. One of my previous organizations, it was a huge success. So every January, I would go there with my, commercial lead, commercial counterpart in the organization. And we talk about how we performed as a business last year, and also as a product. So product KPIs like conversion metrics, etc. And then we'll chart out, I would present the KPIs, the report, or what we want to do, our ambitions for this year.
Really?
And then we'll know where our weak areas from last time, what you want to build, what you want to do differently. I think having that conversation right at the beginning of the year, and very honest conversation, because it should just be your team, which includes, of course, all the developers, everyone. Just absolutely bear down the soul, saying, we didn't do this well. We did this really well, right? And once we're all in agreement, then that whole year, you're already preparing, saying, okay, this is what we got to do differently as a team. I think that really worked, that whole report card session.
Cool. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And I guess being at that kind of product lead, you get to innovate and bring these ideas in, test them, see if they work, take them forward,
Exactly.
which is quite a nice position to be in.
Oh, I love it.
Okay.
Love product.
Cool. Very good. And then, so in terms of building that kind of close-knit, tight-knit team, what do you think are the kind of key ingredients that you have to think about there when you're bringing people into the organization? And how much do you test for the ability to be able to cross-train, etc.?
I think product people have to be people.
Right.
That is important, because you've got to work across functions. You have to bring all functions together and work forward. So that's the first thing I look at when I'm hiring product people. Second is numbers, right? There has to be a certain amount of business acumen. At least that's what I believe. I mean, of course, there are different flavors of product. You could look at just product delivery, where you just need people who are able to run with dev teams and, deliver, and that's different kind of product. But if you ask me what I look for business acumen. I look for someone who's a people person, who just derives energy from people interactions, right? That's really key. I think these two are quite important, and they're the guiding sources. Once you have these two right, everything else falls into place. Because if you have business acumen, you will go learn to look at numbers. If you have business acumen, you will realize that actually customers are the number one importance thing for you to focus on. So everything else falls into place, but these two things are really important for me.
Yeah. And when you think about the customer as well, I think, having people that can put themselves in the shoes of the customer is clearly an important facet for any product role, right? And the customer often looks like very different people. The same product can reach out to such a broad audience. So, when you think about it in that context, look, from my perspective, having diverse teams across the board is one of the most important things, and the most crucial thing that you can do to have a productive, collaborative environment. But I guess when you put it in a product perspective, thinking about trying to put yourself in the shoes of the customer, it becomes even more relevant, right? Have you seen that?
Oh my God. So have I seen that? So diverse teams are smarter. They innovate better because they bring different perspectives to the table.
Mm.
This is a fact. But as a product leader, what other than recruiting diverse people, what we also need to focus on, making sure that the environment is conducive to allow that diversity, or the diversity of thought, to present itself, right? And to do that, to make that context healthy and robust, I think we also have to take care of subconscious biases that oftentimes lurk without us realizing in our own minds. So, gory example, but years ago, I was lead point on a project, and I was leading this whole interaction with one of our largest parties. We were in the boardroom, beginning to negotiate and close the whole conversation. And our CEO was there as well. Otherwise, extremely charming, great person. Walk into the room. Oftentimes, I'm the only woman, and that's fine. That I was also the only woman in the room on that day. And as he walked in, and we were going to sit down, and I was going to start talking about the project. And he said, "Hey, Ritu, could you please make me a cup of tea? I'm really tired." I was like, okay. So while all the boys sat down and started discussing the project, I was sat in the corner making that blessed cup of tea.
Clearly.
Now, it sounds horrific, right? And you would think that I would have turned around and said, "No, please make your own cup of tea." Or I said, "No, and I have spent countless nights actually thinking of a different response.
Of course.
But I could not come up with any, because I genuinely respected that guy, liked the CEO. He was a good guy. I know it didn't come from any ill intent, but without him realizing, he had put me in a position where I had to work hard to the rest of the meeting to have my voice heard.
Yes.
Right? And I think those are those subconscious biases that we should all keep in mind as leaders.
Definitely.
As we groom our teams and provide that context.
Yeah, and the thing that comes to mind there is just general kind of empowerment for leaders or anybody around the table, right? Because in reality, I guess one of the things that may have played out through your mind is how do I push back in that scenario? How do I actually stand up and say, well, no, go and make your own cup of tea? But I guess if it's your CEO and you're sitting there next to them, it's how empowered are you to be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
And that's a different challenge altogether, I guess.
And it's a second, like you don't have time to think all these things. You just go and do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't on me, but it was on him.
Yeah.
And I think what's important is for us as leaders to realize this is a very, very extreme example. I mean, it's actually happened, but it's extreme. But in small nuances as well, maybe when we talk, you know, like for example, in team meetings, when you start a Monday meeting and you're talking about things and then suddenly everyone's talking about children. I've seen teammates who do not have children. At some point, they're rolling their eyes or they feel a little excluded or they want to, what do they bring to the table, right? So just the small things, the small nuances that as a leader, I think fall on your shoulder.
Of course, yeah. So the power of diverse teams is obvious because you build collaboration, you build different ways of doing things, but actually achieving it in a collaborative, successful environment is really, really challenging.
Very challenging.
The last thing that I wanted to kind of talk about, and we've touched on it already, is what makes a strong product leader. So in terms of the skills and behavioral traits that you need and the ingredients that you need to get to where you've got to, can you kind of take us through that?
I think failure. And I've had a fair share sprinkling of failure from personal and professional, fortunately earlier on in my life and my career. I'm so grateful for it. I think adversity in various shapes and forms is the biggest teacher, and it helps you innovate and reinvent yourself. And I love that, and builds that kind of resilience, right? It's, again, very trite, but you must celebrate failure, your own failure. Even if you do it sitting in the privacy of your own room, that's fine. But celebrate failure and be genuinely grateful for it. Because not at the time it happens, but you will realize, you know, as time goes by, that was probably a turning point in your life. You were pivoting or you learned so much, you became a better person, your life became better. It actually happens. Same thing with your products. Some of those failures, and oftentimes, if you're a good product leader, you're taking the right decisions. But that if you're not, and you're failing, fail again, so trite, but fail fast. You have to fail fast and learn and just say, hand on heart, this was a bad idea, let's do it. And that doesn't mean only product features, but failing even in decisions. So oftentimes we've kind of got a product in and said, hey guys, this is how we're going to write user stories. Basic example. And then it's kind of gone really badly. Just to have that humility or the courage to stand up in that wider team meeting and say, my bad. I led you down a path that was not efficient. All right, change of course. What do we do now?
Yeah.
Right? Just a small thing. So just failure and the humility that you learn from it.
Yeah.
I think that's just amazing.
Yeah.
The last thing I would say is that, you know, how we care for our team's mental health. As good leaders, you're always talking to them, understanding what you could do differently to make them happier or how they're going with career progression, things like that. I don't think we have that conversation with ourselves. We don't have time to have it. So I would say make that time. 30 minutes every month, take yourself out for a coffee and have the conversation with yourself. Are you happy? Are you growing? Are there problems that are in your way that you can change? And if you can, what are those steps you're going to take in the next month to change those problems in your context? And if you come to a point where you feel you cannot change the context, you cannot become happier here or you cannot grow more, then remove yourself from that place, because before it kills your mojo, right?
Yeah.
It's very important to know that the context you cannot change versus the context you can change and how you can change it.
Yeah.
Really, what you cannot change, get out of there, keep your mojo. Because you know what? Life is short, but it's also long.
Yes, of course. Control the controllables, right? I love the point around failure as well. And I think the two things tie together, in my opinion. And the way that I like to think about it is, you're failing every day effectively, right? It's about being consciously incompetent and really aware of where your gaps are. And I think if you've got that and you're confident in your own ability, then you're constantly going to be moving forward, right? And I think about that in the context. I had a conversation recently with somebody, and they were kind of saying, failure, when you think about the word and the meaning, it feels like a big thing, but it doesn't really need to be, right? You can have like bite-sized failure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've had big bite-sized failure, but
no, of course, but it's you can search for that constantly, can't you?
Yeah.
It's about searching for the things that you can learn from and develop from.
Absolutely.
Which can happen every day.
Look, resilience. I have 2 daughters.
Yeah.
Grown up now, and I think one thing I've taught and hopefully shown by example is resilience. That I feel is the only thing I can arm them with before they, go off into the world as adults.
Yeah.
Because life will let them down. Things will go wrong, whether professionally or personally. That is a given. That is the only given in life, right? Things will not go as per plan. Your heart will get broken professionally and personally. It's just the resilience as a product person, as a human being, that you need to have to bounce back. And if you have that, nothing can stop you. Life will still be good.
Yeah, of course. And I'm curious, so given your career and where you're at now, right? I think about this from the context of, bootstrap, startup, product leader through to corporate product leader, and then whatever happens next. How have you got yourself into this position?
Like I was saying, there are events that happen in your life that kind of give you the opportunity to reinvent yourself. So I started in India. I studied there. I was a computer science graduate. Got into product really early. Like I said, timed it to the .com bubble burst. So the first B2C we were developing, very ambitious in Mumbai. There was no agile. We were building in waterfall. We weren't building because the customers wanted it, because there were no e-commerce customers in India yet. We were looking at the West and we kind of creating something new. So we're building this big elephant in isolation, because not because the customer said they wanted it, but because we could build it. And by the time we launched it, we timed it perfectly with the .com bubble burst, and we failed magnificently.
Right.
And as a product manager, with very little skin in the game at that point, that was an amazing lesson for me to learn. And I realized the whole benefit of failing fast, building lean, right? So all that is very, very critical. So from there, I then, of course, went on to lead their B2B business, took whatever we had built for the B2C and launched the B2B business for the company. They went public, great experience.
Right.
Then pivoted when I had my first daughter, Zoya. As a new mom, I wanted more control over my time, and foolishly, I thought entrepreneurship would do that for me.
Bad move.
Yeah. So I launched my first startup, which I angel funded, moved on to my second, which I bootstrapped. Loads of fun. I had my second daughter, and when she was about a year, I had a little bit of a Princess Diana moment, where I realized there were 3 of us in my marriage, me, my husband, and his girlfriend. So, when I was referred to the personal failure, so I said, you know what, heartbreak aside, great time to reinvent myself. And I decided I wanted to study further. So I came to London, where I got a scholarship at London Business School. I studied there and joined fintech as product in, being a CEO or founder gives you transferable skills to be a product person and vice versa. So moved very comfortably into fintech in product. And that's what I've been doing over 10 years. Joined corporates because now I'm a single parent, 2 girls. And I think, keeping your financial risk situation always in mind is critical. So went back to corporates, and thank God, because I saw what scale up. I was worked with, unicorns like Wonga, Pay Later, the Bara Money. We launched that in a large company where we were like a startup within a large company. Extremely great experience. Worked with PaySafe that was just on its path to going public at that point. Learned so much working across their 2 digital wallets, Skrilla and Nutella. And World Remit, what a glorious experience. We were going through a change in leadership even, really growing. We'd acquired a new business, very cool business, Senway. So we were learning from both sides, absolutely great. And then earlier this year, I saw a gap in the whole, remittance space. And I saw that no one was really solving it. And I realized that actually, it had to be disrupted by a startup, because to solve that gap would mean cannibalizing your biggest cash cow for all these big remittance players. So when I got an opportunity in July this year, I decided to start off on my own, and I launched my new startup called Seva. And we're going to be solving for migrant families back home. And empowering them financially and allowing financial inclusion. So really excited about that as I start raising later in the year. So wish me better sense or good luck.
Well, look, that is a truly inspiring story. And I think just based on this conversation today, it's pretty clear to me, and I think to anyone listening, that you will absolutely smash it with the new business. So look, I guess before we close off, then there's one last question that I wanted to ask you, and I think this is very pertinent given the story that you've just gone through. So what do you know now that you wish you'd known at the start of your career or earlier in your career?
Tongue in cheek. Shit happens and it's random.
Of course.
Well, I think most importantly, and this comes with experience, no day is doomsday. Things will fail. Some things will not go as per plan, but sometimes that's a great thing. So just to have that patience to sit through the failure and the bad days, that is something I would have advised my younger self.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's a perfect lesson. Brilliant. Thank you, Ritu. Really appreciated your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.